Respiratory protection. This is always a good one to cover, and we will get into it now. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope you are following us, and let's get started. So, um, respiratory protection program. I'm using the general or the federal requirement. I am using the OSHA 10 curriculum, so there is a lot to cover, but only going to cover the highlighted sections. Again, my frame of reference for communicating to you today is going to give you the highlighted sections of the respiratory protection program. What we need to do as a business to make sure, one, do we have to implement a program? Is it required? And how to do it effectively and the steps to do that. And this is one program that I don't care where I go, I can easily pick apart almost every program that we encounter because there's so much to do. There's so many steps to this program, so many steps that it's easily overlooked. Oh, did we do the fit testing? Oh, do we even have the right cartridges? Did we do an air monitoring evaluation of this or that or whatever? Or do we even need to wear respirators? Is a N95 okay or whatever? So those are things that we look at. One of the most common industries that typically overuse the respiratory or the respirators is painting booths. They tend to go overboard where they only need a certain type of respirator. They're using something that's totally way more than what they actually need, and sometimes they're even using the wrong cartridge. That happens more often than not, is they're using the incorrect cartridges. So let's get into it. This is the fun stuff, and we will jump right in. So these are the standards. We don't need to get into that. Okay. An employee exposure to concentrations of an airborne contaminant that would occur if the employee was not using respirator protection. So, if you are dealing with any kind of chemical, any kind of dust, anything that would cause you respiratory harm, the first thing that an employee must do is we need to do an assessment. This applies for everything in the workplace. We must do a job hazard analysis or an assessment, a risk assessment. Do I need to wear a respirator and why? Just because there's dust in the air doesn't mean we need to have a respirator. So we need to know what we're protecting ourselves against. Okay? You have to know what you're protecting yourself against in order to have the right kind of respirator. It's silliness to do anything other than a proper evaluation. You don't know what you don't know. So we have to make that really clear up front. Okay, so the respirator, again, we're going to cover the highlighted sections for this training. These are the different types of respirators. You have a quarter, a half, a full face, and a mouth. These aren't even around anymore. But the full face and the half mask are primarily the main choices for respiratory protection. And that quarter mask, I don't see those ever, and especially that mouthpiece one. Again, this is federal OSHA training PowerPoint we're using. Then you got helmets with the attachment. Then you see the full body suit. These are for mostly like sandblasters, painters, and these offer really good protection. And then these are your filters. Just because you have a half face or a full face and you have filters attached to those respirators, the filters may be the wrong kind. If you have a volatile organic compound that you're dealing with and you have corrosive filters, it's not going to work. It's not going to be effective. So you have to have the right kind of filters. This is crucial. The filters should be HEPA filters. In most cases, you must have these kinds of filters. You need to do the evaluation as to what kind of filter you need. These are some canister filters. Don't see these very often. And establishing the length of time your filter is going to be in service. And this is a whole nother conversation. Okay, I'm not going to get into that, but there is a end of life for these filter systems. Is it 24 hours or is it 40 hours? I don't know. Every filter system is a little different, and it needs careful evaluation by an expert. And that is something that 3M will tell you, and all the other suppliers will tell you as well. So negative pressure respirator is a respirator in which the air pressure inside the face piece is negative during inhalation with respect to the ambient air pressure outside. Now, this is one area that needs to be clearly understood. When you have a negative pressure respirator, it does not supply air. It only filters the air. So that needs to be clear for everyone that is using these kinds of ambient air filter pressure. This is a dust mask. This is, again, another negative pressure particulate respirator. And obviously, we see these. I've been seeing more and more of these, and out in public at Costco, and people are getting paranoid again and they're using these. Are these correct? 100% no. These do not offer any protection against any virus. So it's just a comfort level. But again, that's a great example for using something that it's not designed to do. You need to do a job hazard assessment to make sure you have the right respirator for the right type of hazard you're dealing with. So an air purifying respirator. This will protect you from most everything. This is except a supplied air. It's just going to clean the air. It's not going to give you any oxygen. And then a positive pressure respirator is a respirator that will provide you with air. These are, in my opinion, when I use a positive air pressure, it's easier. It just blows in, and it provides a better flow of air, and it's usually the most desirable. But you got to carry all this stuff, which always can be a bit of a problem. An atmosphere supplying respirator is the best. That means air, fresh air, breathable air, no matter what the environment, is being put into your respirator. This is ideal, but it comes with a big responsibility in carrying around the tank or having a hose attached to your system. So it does give you continuous airflow on demand or pressure demand. So there is some difficulties getting used to that. And of course, you have to carry this hose everywhere you go. But it is really nice to have supplied air when you're in, let's say, a confined space for an extended period of time, or you're in an atmosphere that you're really not sure if there's a potential for change in the atmosphere. So if you're not aware of that, and you're not just, you don't have all the facts if you're going to go into a tank or any kind of other confined space, it's always best to use a supplied air with an air monitor. And that air monitor should be constantly reading the oxygen level and other various gases that other known gases that you may have in there. And so this is ideal for having unknown situations. And then you have an SCBA. Again, these are primarily going to be used for a rescue situation. A lot of your fire departments will use these to go in and rescue. If you have a rescue team at your location, those are always good to have on site. And then you have an escape bottle. These escape bottles are really only used for emergencies. You'll often see these in labs, rightly so, because if you have a release in a lab, this could be grabbed real quick and put on your face and at least give you enough time to get out of that lab. Now, those of you wearing a respirator, a negative pressure and positive pressure check is required. So that's basically your seal check. That needs to be done every time you use your respirator. And we have the qualitative fit test. This is something that needs to be done at least annually. And if you have any weight gain or weight loss or any kind of facial features that change, and especially if you have facial hair. Now, OSHA does look at facial hair. If you are wearing a respirator, it's a good idea to have a good clean seal. If you have a beard, that typically won't work. So if you have a goatee, even those can be frowned upon. The main thing is to have a good seal. And then you have, this is my favorite type of quantitative fit testing. This tells you exactly what your seal is for your respirator. And by the way, everyone who wears a half mask, full face, any kind of respirator has to have some kind of fit test. And there is a fit factor that is calculated into this, which we're not going to go too much into that. Now, if you're dealing with an uh, immediate dangerous to life, or what I call immediate danger to death situation, and you definitely need to anticipate having supplied air for those kinds of situations. But anything that's any atmosphere with oxygen content below 19.5% is going to be supplied air. You need to have supplied air. Now, so step one, evaluate the need for respiratory protection. And how do we do that? The very first thing we need to do is identify the products that we're dealing with. What are we doing? Sandblasting, powder coating, painting, confined space, welding, whatever you're doing, you need to identify the hazard. Is there enough oxygen? What are we introducing into the environment? And then we got to evaluate that. And in most cases, we have to do what's called, we have to get an industrial hygienist involved. And we want to check the air and check for toxins or anything that would cause harm to you. And typically when we do the air monitoring, we determine, what level of respiratory protection we need. And do we need a program? Do we need to have physicals done? Do we need to have pulmonary function tests done? Do we have to have a physical done? And those are all part of the process. Now, if you get a new process in, this is what typically happens in most companies that we work with, or that we start working with, and we go backwards. Like, how did you determine you need a full face respirator for this process? Oh, we really didn't. We just put a full face on with these cartridges, and we figured this is better than nothing. That's the typical process for requiring respiratory protection. That's not the way to go. That is not the way to go. We want you to do a hazard assessment. Figure out what the hazards are, do some air monitoring, get the results, and then determine if you need a respirator program. If you do need a respirator program, you need to create a respirator program. This is a required, documented program. And then you must do training on this program. And then you must have your employees sent to the clinic to have a pulmonary function test. And you need to identify where they need to have a respirator and who is in the program. Did they have a pulmonary function test? Do they have a respirator issued to them? Have they had training? And we need to evaluate that training. This really is the scope of the program. There's 8 separate steps here that need to be done. And it's not just a one-time deal, it's an ongoing process. So putting on a respirator and having an employee go into a confined space and not knowing what the hazards are is absolutely the most common thing that we see, but the most dangerous thing. Those cartridges may not be the right kind. They may need a supplied air tank and they don't have one. So they may, pass out because there's no air. So we need to do a complete evaluation every single time. There's no like, oh, we're just going to do this once, and we only do it once a year. We go into the tank once a year and clean out the tank settlement on the bottom. It's not a big deal. We're only down there for an hour. Well, that is a big deal. Do you have enough oxygen down there? Do you have a way to get your guy out in case he needs to be rescued? What is down there? What chemicals are down there? Those are some things that we all need to consider. And oftentimes it's too late. It's after the fact when we realize, we're in trouble now. So once we establish our respirator program, what kind of respirators are we going to use? who's going to be in the program, how often do we do training, and we should document all of this. Everything must be documented. Here's an example of a respirator IDLH situation, which should be the normal situation. If you're going into an unknown environment, you need to have supplied air. And again, everything needs to be evaluated. We just don't go into these confined spaces blindly and hope for the best. We have to prepare for the worst. And we need to be responsible for doing that. You will be held responsible if there's a fatality or an injury. So here's some other examples of IDLH situations. We're not going to get too much into that. But if you are going into a tank and you're not aware of what's happening, you must do a hazard assessment, okay? You don't want to be in the situation of rescuing somebody. Again, we're not going to get into this classes of filters. You need to assess the problem first. You need to determine what you need, and then you need to assess what kind of filtering system you have. The one company that is very good about helping companies out with this is 3M. They'll actually come to your location. Now let's talk about medical evaluation. Back to 3M, they will help you out. They'll come in and help you determine what kind of cartridges to use. In some cases, they'll do training, but again, I wouldn't rely on someone who doesn't understand the entire scope of what you're doing. The best trainers are the ones who are going to help you with assessing the risk, maybe doing some air monitoring, and then doing training for your folks, then identifying the type of respirator that you need with the cartridge, and then managing your medical evaluations. Now, everybody has to have a medical evaluation that's going to wear a respirator, and that it requires going to the clinic and filling out a really long 20-page questionnaire, and then meeting with the doctor, and then doing a fit test to make sure that the respirator fits properly, then doing a pulmonary function test to make sure you're healthy enough to wear a respirator. And these are very important because you don't want to have a respirator on and all of a sudden you can't breathe or having trouble. We need to make sure you're going to be okay wearing a respirator. So these are the different kinds of fit testing. Again, we're going to cover what you need to know. And it is one of the more difficult programs out there. You have a confined space program, you have HAZCOM program, forklift programs, or powered industrial truck programs. Those are fairly easy to manage. Confined space is a little tough. HAZCOM is fairly easy, but I tell you what, respirator programs, they probably have the most actionable things to do out of all the programs that we support for our clients. And it really needs to be, you need to stay on top of that. There's other programs that are pretty detailed, but this one actually covers, your respirator program is going to have HAZCOM in it. It's going to have confined space in it, potentially lockout, tagout, and various other supporting PPE, of course, personal protection equipment, and then job hazard analysis. So there's a lot of supporting programs within this program. So there's a lot of training that needs to get done. Just slapping a respirator on somebody and throwing them in the tank is absolutely not the right thing to do. And we've heard the stories that, oh yeah, I just needed to go in there for 10 minutes or 5 minutes. I just needed to check the gauge, and next thing you know, the guy needs to be rescued, and somebody else goes in there. Now they need to be rescued, and now we have 2 fatalities. So we don't want to ever have that happen. This pretty much concludes what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. There's a lot more training that needs to get done when it comes to this. You got maintenance care. You have other types of training that needs to get done to support this program. Really is a big deal. I don't want you to think, oh, we just need to, throw on a respirator, jump in a tank. That's the absolute worst thing to do. If you're doing a new process, you need to do a job hazard analysis or some kind of evaluation of the process to make sure that you're not putting your employee at risk. And that is your burden as a business owner. As a business, it is a requirement. If If you have a basic paint booth, it's pretty standard stuff. You deal with the same paint day in and day out. Do you need a respirator? More than likely you do. Is it good to do an assessment? Absolutely. See what kind of paint you're using. How long are you in there? Do you have enough oxygen? Is your filter running properly? Or if you're going into a confined space, a sewer system, which is really dangerous because it's very unpredictable in a lot of these sewer systems. And so it is the burden of the employer to assess all the hazards of the working environment. If you are wearing a respirator and you don't know why, and your boss just told you to, please question that. Find out why. Why am I wearing this? What are the hazards I'm experiencing or protecting myself from? Did I get a fit test? Did I get a pulmonary function test? Did I see a doctor? These are things that you need to have done in order to protect yourselves. This is not a simple program. Please don't be foolish and just slapping on a respirator and hoping for the best. That is not okay. I care about you. Call me, text me, email me. We want to help you. ROI is here to support your business, your small business to medium size to whatever industry you're in. We want to help you. We cover all industries, construction. We do a lot of refineries and aerospace, to public works, to school districts. So we have a lot of different types of industries that we serve. So we want to bring our experience to you and support you in keeping people safe. That is our purpose for our existence, is to help people be safe on the job. Now, I wish each of you a happy Memorial weekend. God bless each of you. And if you like, follow us. Again, I'm not making, I had no bells and whistles here. I'm just trying to have some fun and help people out. Please call me, text me, email me. If you want a quote or you want to talk to me about your specific business, I'm happy to help you. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.